good morning, afternoon, or evening to wherever you're joining us from today. My name is Kirsten Hartmann, and I will moderate today's event. I'm a policy officer at the Bundeskanzler-Helmut-Schmidt-Stiftung, in short BKHS, a German nonpartisan foundation working as a future-oriented think tank that commemorates the former Chancellor Helmut Schmidt and the topics that were of interest to him and brings them to the future. At the BKHS program unit, European and International Politics, I am leading the project on Peacebuilder, in which we focus on how Germany can support the implementation of the Youth, Peace and Security Agenda. From now on, I will use the acronym YPS to save us all some time, which we will need because today we have gathered, as you can see, a room full of expertise around the topics of youth, of peace, and of security, not only among our audience, but also around our virtual table. So we have guests from policy, bureaucracy, and practice. We will hear from 4 experts that know the YPS agenda by heart. So Hannah Koch from Germany, Datu Raid Salik from the autonomous Bangsamoro region in the Philippines, Christina Odera from Kenya, and Paul Klahre from Germany. And I'm very happy that they will discuss with Boris Mijatovic, a member of the German Bundestag, Dr. Martin Schuldes from the Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, Marta Harnik from the German Federal Foreign Office, and Till Verbeek-Strootman from IAB, the International Youth Service of the Federal Republic of Germany. And as you can see, the room is full, but this simply underlines to me the importance of partnerships across sectors, generations, and institutions in advancing the YPS agenda. And coming to this agenda after years of advocacy from youth and their allies, as many of you know, in December 2015, the UN Security Council recognized for the first time the positive and important role of youth and peace and security efforts, and thus formalized the YPS agenda. But today, so nearly 10 or a little bit more than 10 years later, the promises of the agenda seem to be far away from the realities of many young people around the world. Among others, youth expertise around peace and security continues to be dismissed and marginalized in societal and political debates and processes. And therefore, with our new platform called Youth Expertise on Peace and Security, the Bundeskanzler-Helmut-Schmidt-Stiftung aims to bring light to this, or bring this knowledge to the forefront. And we have contributions in text and video formats of young people from across the world that show the broad range of topics around youth, peace and security, and what this actually means in practice. And I will quickly now give you a sneak peek to the platform, but I very much hope that after the event, you will take some time to have a deep dive into the different contributions from the international experts. So let me quickly give you a sneak peek. Sorry, this is not the right one. As usual, this happens all the time if you try to share the screen. Okay, so now you should see our new platform, and you can find among an after movie from our expert workshop, you find more information about the project, a policy paper, and then all the contributions from our international experts. You see interviews with all of them, and you also can see that they not only wrote in English and it is translated into German, but they also wrote in their mother language. So in this case, Serbian. And if you're not, if you need a teaser to why you should read the great contributions, they also provided us with some contributions in Word, in video format, so there's no excuse for not having a look at them. And yes, so we have, as you can see, they wrote about the climate and YPS nexus. They shared insights from implementing the agenda locally and nationally in different continents, partnerships between youth, civil society, and governments, failing ownership of the agenda, for instance, among youth in Latin America, the UN Youth Delegate Program, and they used YPS as a lens for analyzing, for instance, the current social political crisis in Serbia, and so much more. So now you should see me again. And the experts should not only want to inform, that they also want to inspire you and also many other people that meaningful youth engagement is key rather than a nice add-on for just and sustainable peace. And it is key not only for youth, but for all generations. So I want to underline that this platform is equally relevant for those that have never heard about the YPS agenda as it is for those that have worked with it for years. And while it features youth expertise on peace and security, it is explicitly addressed to young and older people and entails recommendations to representatives from policy, bureaucracy, and practice. And speaking of these different stakeholders groups, with this super quick run, I want to move now to the discussion. And as the YPS agenda is slowly getting into its teen years, we need to move away from underlining why it is important to include youth to how we can generally co-design peace and security together. And I hope and I'm convinced that our many guests today will have some ideas for this. And while we will discuss, please do feel free to write questions in the Q&A function, which you can find on your screen below. And for those who know me, I'm a strict timekeeper, so I will do my best to find some time to include and address your questions. But our speakers will also try to answer some of them in the meantime. And without further ado, first we will focus on the policy level and in particular the German political context. And for this, I want to welcome Hanna Koch and Boris Mijatovic. Boris Mijatovic is a member of the German Bundestag for the party Alliance 90, the Greens. He serves as a full member for the Committee on Foreign Affairs and the Committee on Human Rights and Humanitarian Assistance. He is the chairman of the Subcommittee on International Order, United Nations and International Organizations, and a substitute member of the Committee on European Affairs. And among many other things, he's also a member of the supervisory board of the Center for International Peace Operations, CIF. And he will discuss with Hanna Koch, who is a former German UN Youth Delegate 2024-2025 and is currently pursuing a French-German dual bachelor's program in political science and sustainability studies. So thanks so much to both of you for joining. And Hanna, so maybe we'll start with you. Why is YPS even relevant for Germany nationally and internationally? And how can we ensure that all 5 YPS pillars are implemented?
Yeah, thank you for the invitation and the platform to speak today. I think in the context of Germany, we've seen that on the UN level, Germany for 2025 had the chairmanship of the Peacebuilding Commission and tried to drive forward the WPS and the YPS agenda. But also we're looking at Germany looking for a seat in the UN Security Council 2027, 2028, which would be an amazing chance to put forward the YPS agenda to spearhead development also among Security Council members. Because if we look at the countries who have implemented a national action plan amongst UN Security Council members, there's not so many at the moment. And in Germany generally, I think if we look at not only the participation pillar, but for example, also the prevention pillar in Germany locally, we see a rise of extremist views and voting numbers among especially young men, for example, for the AfD, the right-wing extremist party. So there's a lot of I think there's a lot of entry points as to why YPS is important, but also where Germany should combine the international level and the national level as kind of a drive to move forward. And I think right now we especially would need the political drive behind that. Yeah.
And the political drive is a perfect bridge to you, Boris Mijatovic. So could you maybe react to what has just been said, and also how members of parliament could support the YPS agenda and meaningful youth participation in the
Yes,
political
thanks.
arena.
Thanks, Kirsten, and thanks, Hannah, for highlighting already some of the key words. Thanks for having me. I think the Parliament, first of all, is a place where you can learn and study how parliamentarian democracy works. So internships is one way to go into the Parliament to see how an office of an MP is working. I can say from my personal experience, it enriches also my daily work if I have more input and being close to a younger generation. I'm already growing old, so basically this input is very valuable. We've been doing this all the time. I'm 4 years now in German Parliament, and we have had very good experiences. We have also the IPS, that is a program for interparliamentarian exchange for students to come in, I think for 5 months. This is something we should support as well. But commenting on what Hannah said about prevention and participation, and especially for young men, I think we have challenges in many countries in a different way. In Serbia, it's a question of democracy and rule of law. In Bangladesh, it's the upcoming elections, the participation and the corruption in the states. Well, that's in Serbia pretty much as well. But what I want to say, in common, we have challenges as the climate, as disinformation, as participation in general. So basically, this is something we can share and work upon all across the world to have these kind of knowledges to be shared. And this is the value that we should push for more and more.
Thank you so much. So Hannah, I saw already you noting down something. So do you want to react to this?
Well, I think definitely, like, I'm a political science student. I know how valuable internships are, but A, most of them are unpaid, and B, they're not, I wouldn't qualify them as real participation or engagement, because you're in a hierarchical system, you have a supervisor, and yes, there are a lot of nice people who really take youth voices into account, but this is more on a professional level. What the YPS agenda wants to expand on is actual power delegation. So as Kirsten said, I was the UN Youth Delegate for Germany 2024-25. And for us, we always felt that it was very up to one person or a single person to determine how much we were actually integrated, how meaningfully we were contributed. So our comments to resolutions, our speeches at the UN, how much difference could they actually make? And if we look at YPS also in the German parliament, for example, there are very little young briefers on peace and security. These are, for example, is a very concrete action also for you as the chair of the subcommittee, for example, to invite young people as briefers also on peace and security. To invite youth groups, not only for peace and security, but for a lot of different other topics, because as we always like to say, there are no youth topics. So every topic touches upon the realities of young people. And to have that, we need a kind of power delegation or a different intensity than just internships.
Maybe I comment on that directly, if I may, Kirsten. You're completely right, Hannah, and I didn't want to substitute or replace the participation by saying, well, you can be a passive guest on our, let's say, decision-making process. My take was to illustrate that you need a toolbox to be fit to purpose, let's say. If you have an agenda, you need to know the toolbox, how to be integrated into a decision-making process. And in that way, I was suggesting not to forget about the internships. I know the bad paid situation happened to me 20 years ago when I was an intern. And I can say for my office, we try to pay as good as possible. But yes, seriously, this is a question we have to take care of. And of course, you can have luck with an MP or you can have bad luck. I don't know if I'm bad luck or good luck, but I can just suggest to do that. This is no replacement for being integrated, but we have debates that are ongoing with the youth. For example, we had the debate on, I don't know how to translate that into English, on Wehrpflicht, on the military service that is obligatory in many countries. And we have suspended it 12, 13 years ago. And now we are discussing in German parliament to reactivate the obligation, right? And the question was, who do we ask? Who is replacing or who is putting himself, who is representing the young generation? And so we had the spokesperson for the pupils, for the school, for the school people. So 18-year-old guy, he did a great job, but he was then challenged by his age partners, age colleagues, by saying, "Well, he's not representing us." We have a youth parliament, as an example, a children youth parliament, but this is a different purpose. So basically, we are looking in Germany a little much to the Gremia, and I was more activating already existing, let's say, activists and including them into the process. That would be a take that I would give to Hannah back again.
Okay, Hannah, would you like to add on this and maybe underline from your part what would be necessary to meaningfully integrate youth, and again making sure that we operationalize all 5 pillars, so partnership, prevention, protection, disengagement, and reintegration, and of course participation.
Well, first to Boris, I think, there's a lot of debate around that, and I think the debate surrounding mandatory military service is a good example where also young people were not asked from the beginning. They were not involved in the process right from the start. But when criticism arrived, especially towards our government, there were more youth being asked, "Oh, what do you think about this?" But this is what I think, that it's already too late if we start when the ball has already started rolling. And if we look at Kirsten's question, I think what a lot of countries have implemented successfully, I'm not saying that we have to have it, but it's a national action plan that outlines, for example, how all of the 5 pillars can be meaningfully integrated to have a comprehensive strategy for Germany. I think you weren't member of parliament then, but for the WPS, so the Women, Peace, Security Agenda, there was such a national action plan, actually also a second one developed. Unfortunately, none after 2020. And we already have a blueprint on how to do it. We don't have to invent the wheel from start. There is already outlines. There's very, very, very successful national action plans in other countries. I'm sure Christine and also Datu will talk about that. So this would be, for example, an instrument to make it easier. And apart from that, I think we're looking at kind of the classics, kind of democratizing access, but also deepening mandates, looking at accountability loops, all of that can make youth participation and engagement really meaningful.
Can I react on this, Kirsten?
Yes, one last reaction.
Please, one last one. Yes, and I try to be short and follow your instructions. No, but Hannah, you nailed it down on the point that it was too late, and I would like to counter argue. We are within the process, and it was a public hearing where we invited the representatives from the school students, right? And it was not too late. It was maybe in the public discussion we have been already seen that this has forwarded a few steps, but it was. I just want to counter the argument we are always asked too late. There is no too late in this process. It is still ongoing, and please take your chances and activate yourself and be part of, be loud for this. This is important. In the public hearing, we have been inviting the representative. We have been asking. We have been trying to include, and I would not, lose this opportunity, and especially not for the further task of a generation-wise solution on that topic. But in general, you're completely right. And I will look to the invitation for young people to the subcommittee. This I take granted as from this discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I think that's already a great outcome of this discussion. And with this call to action, I would like to move further, because we have now already hinted a few times that there is much to learn from other countries, especially when it's about implementing the YPS agenda. So I want to move to the part to how Germany can support the YPS agenda abroad. And for that, I want to welcome Datu Raid Salik and Dr. Martin Schuldes. Dr. Martin Schuldes is head of Division G23, that's Peace and Security, Disaster Risk Management, in the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, in short, BMZ, which is more familiar maybe to some. And Datu Raid Salik is the lead focal for the Bangsamoro Action Plan on Youth, Peace and Security in the Bangsamoro government, the Philippines. So, Datu, why is localization key for YPS implementation? And what was also maybe the role of intergenerational partnerships in implementing YPS in the Bangsamoro?
Yep. Thanks so much, Kirsten. Hello, everyone. Good evening from the Philippines. I think localization is really the key for YPS implementation because youth do not really experience insecurity in abstract terms. You know that? They experience it where they live, in the institution that govern them, and of course, in the conflicts that shape their daily lives. In the Bangsamoro per se, the Bangsamoro is in the southern part of the Philippines. A national plan alone could not capture the realities of displacement, clan conflict, post-siege trauma, or even reintegration after violence. Localization allowed us to translate global YPS principles into really the concrete actions that fit our political settlement as Bangsamoro, our governance architecture, and of course, our social fabric, which is very kind of different from other contexts. So it turned the YPS from a policy commitment, from a mere policy commitment, into a governance responsibility. So this is just not for civil society organization, but really it should be embedded in our institution. So one of the biggest obstacles to meaningful intergenerational collaboration is that peace and security spaces are still structured around hierarchy and seniority. So those are the challenges. Youth are often consulted, but rarely trusted as co-decision makers. On the other hand, elders and institutions sometimes fear that youth participation will destabilize already fragile systems. You know, they think that youth are just intruders, no? So this creates a false choice between stability and inclusion. So in the Bangsamoro, we address this by design rather than goodwill. So we institutionalize intergenerational collaboration through mixed technical working groups that created our action plan, where youth leaders, religious authorities, local officials, and bureaucrats shared responsibility for shaping the policy. So those conversations were not symbolic, but they were difficult, negotiated, and of course accountable. But that friction produced a plan that is both responsive and durable. So the broader lesson is global. Intergenerational collaboration is not an add-on to YPS. It is not a heavy or additional load to their plates. It is a condition for its success, actually. So where youth participation is embedded in the systems rather than personalities, it becomes sustainable. And when the localization is taken seriously, YPS moves from aspiration to practice, from rhetoric to impact. And I think that's really the concept of localizing YPS in different contexts.
Thank you so much, Datu. And with this, Dr. Martin Schuldes, if you would like to react and also maybe tell us how German development cooperation is supporting youth and YPS and why this is important and how it can be strengthened in the future. Easy questions.
Yes, very easy. First of all, thank you for having me and for giving me the opportunity to really participate in this dialogue. I mean, Datu has mentioned a lot of very important points. Maybe two or three I would like to briefly reflect upon. And the first point is the importance of the context. Indeed, as Datu has mentioned, we think that in order for a YPS agenda to be implemented in a successful way, we need to have a solid understanding of the context of the environment and the social, which means the social, the ethnic, the socio-economic ecosystem where it is supposed to take place. So context matters, which is not an easy undertaking. Second point, in my view, is it has also been touched upon by Datu is the aspect of inclusion. We think localization is essential because it makes sure that youth is not being treated as a homogeneous group, but that it is necessary to recognize the diversity of young people in terms of gender, ethnicity, geography, class, and the different kinds of experience they have made in conflict situations. With regard to what Germany can do in order to not only promote the YPS agenda, but to help implement it, to really have an impact on the ground. First interesting point is, again, addressing what Datu has said, there seems to be still ongoing, maybe a combination of a misperception, but also mistrust between the generations. I found it a bit tough that youth are being seen as intruders. I hope that not every context is like this, but what we can do is to help create awareness and to do away with misunderstandings and to show to both generations, to the young people and also to the more experienced elderly people, that intergenerational dialogue is a benefit for both, and that exchanging views and sharing experience, but also maybe also fears, is a mutual learning process from which both generations can benefit. And if we succeed in doing so, I would hope that the elderly would understand the benefit of the wealth of the ideas, the innovation, and the ideas of the younger people, and the other way around, the younger ones, the younger generations would more strongly start valuing the experience of the elderly people. So let's bring them together, let's foster dialogue, but also help, maybe on a final point, help to overcome the barriers for the younger generations. And one of the barriers is a limited access to funding, and also trying to make sure that they are protected in an appropriate way, because sometimes they are under attack by fake news, by also all kinds of digital threats, and also, as I said, limited access to funding. Yeah, maybe that's a first reaction to what Datu has said. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, Datu, that's also your time to react what just has been said, and maybe also, as you just mentioned in the beginning, that you have some good examples for intergenerational dialogue and collaboration, but maybe expand on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Kirsten. I think I was moved by the word awareness by Dr. Martin. It's very important because when you aware community, for example, young people, when you aware young people, you get to empower them. Awareness and empowerment.
Datu, we cannot hear you anymore.
Hello, Kirsten?
Yeah, we can hear you again. Great.
Yeah, so yep, I kind of moved. I was moved by what Dr. Martin said about awareness, because when you aware people, you get to empower them. And it's a common problem for YPS globally, the funding support to particularly young people in carrying out the advocacy on YPS agenda in their respective communities. And I think it is in the job of the government who will really push through funding support to these young people, and of course to bridge dialogue between across generations, ranging from different sectors such as young people, religious organization, civil society organization, and the government, and of course the elders. It's very important for them to sit together and understand the pain points of the community, and of course come up with a solution and co-develop a solution that will really impact the community. And I think that's the really one of the best practices that I can share from the Bangsamoro localization of YPS.
Thank you so much. And I think this underlines again that although it's a youth, peace, and security agenda, it's an intergenerational approach that needs the forces of all generations to work together for just and sustainable peace for every generation, and not only for one. And I know it time flies, but I now would like to move to another layer of Germany's international work on YPS. So for that, I'm very glad to welcome Christine Odera and Marta Harnik to the virtual stage to accompany me. And Marta Harnik is the desk officer for youth, peace, and security in the Directorate General for International Order, the United Nations, and arms control in the German Federal Foreign Office. And Christine Odera is the youth representative on the Council of the National Youth Service of Kenya and the co-chair for the Kenya Coalition on Youth, Peace, and Security. And in your contribution to the platform, Christine, you wrote about a collective impact approach that is needed to advance YPS. So maybe you can share what you mean by that and how youth, civil society, and governments can work together.
Thank you so much, Karsten, and thank you for having me. So when we look at the conversations around the youth, peace, and security agenda, you realize, and I was glad when Dr. Martin was saying how we have a lot of these barriers. And what we are learning now is these barriers cannot be solved by one party. It has to take a collective action, a collective responsibility for countries and continents and the world at large to really move towards the direction where young people are not only seen as perpetrators, as a lot of the policy dialogues have been framing them as youth bulge or as security threats, but really seeing them as peace agents, because really they understand the street smartness when it comes to what is happening within their localities, what issues that they would really want addressed. And so when it comes to these systemic barriers, funding is one of them. The other thing is the narratives, the stereotypes that we keep identifying young people with. How is the power dynamics around youth engagement? Like Datu has said, a lot of the times young people are consulted, but they never have any vote. It is so unfortunate that since 2015, when the UN Security Council unanimously adopted Resolution 2250, only 3% of peace processes have young people. And we really need to start asking ourselves, is this the future we really want to see? And so one of the solutions that I think could work is ensuring that the youth, civil society, and government work together. Think of it as a stool where you have the three legs and then the top. And so these three parties, government that is heavy on ensuring policies and ensuring that some of these agendas are cascaded down to the grassroots. The civil society that really brings the advocacy and the agency and ensuring that they're amplifying a lot of the grassroots organizations' efforts. And the youth who understand their needs. And in a case like Kenya, they're the majority. So it will be nice to have them really speak about the issues that they want to address. And so the three, when they work together, you realize that at the top, they're able to bear the burden, bear the weight of insecurity, bear the weight of really wanting to create systems that work for the people and for the countries, for the continent, the neighbors, and global over. And so looking forward, we really ensure that we are moving from tokenistic policies to actionable and impactful policies. In Kenya, we realized that peace is actually good for business, because for every dollar spent in peace building activities, you get a return on investment of $5 to $15. And so we need all these actors to work together. Nigeria, which was the first African country to come up with a national action plan, one of the solutions that Hannah had suggested, really was able to come up with a national action plan because the government, the civil society, and the youth came together to have a discussion. We all might know what happens in Nigeria, the resources that Nigeria has, and not just the government will be able to address all these issues. All these three stakeholders need to ensure that their voices are amplified in taking care of this situation. But then when the three come together, there needs to be steps to be followed that will decipher the common practices that we have learned previously. And there are 5 key issues that we need to ensure are in place that will then help us move a step forward. We need to have a common agenda. We need to have shared metrics of what goals do we really want to address now that we have the 3 stakeholders coming together. Do we have a mutually reinforcing action that will ensure that all of us in our different capacities are moving towards an impactful, unifying voice? The 4th one is communication. Communication has to trickle down from government to civil society to the youth. So at no point the trust is forgotten, because that is what we have learned. There's a lot of mistrust within the institutions that are currently in our countries, and some of the institutions that are being built. So how do we ensure that this trust is harnessed? Communication becomes very key. And lastly, we need a team that will be dedicated to ensuring that we get to that agenda, we get to that goal. I will stop there, Kirsten.
Thank you. Just to make sure that Mate Harnik from the Federal Foreign Office can also respond to what you have just been saying. So, Mate, the floor is yours, and maybe you could include in your answer how the Federal Foreign Ministry incorporates the YPS agenda into its work abroad and so far.
Yes, thank you so much also for the invitation and for organizing everything. Thank you, Christine and Kirsten. I've, of course, read your article and I found it super interesting. And I agree that obviously we need to work together on different levels. And one point struck with me specifically, which is the part of communication, which is what I've tried to make the heart of my work on YPS. I've met several people that are in this room here today already, and it's always been it's always been a priority for me to communicate clearly. Hannah and I've met when she was a youth delegate here. Kirsten I've met, Paul and I've met, and also with our recent youth delegates. It's very, very important for me, and I think for the government, to be clear on what we can do, to not to have some sort of expectation management, not because there is no will or no that the government doesn't see or we don't see that it's necessary, but to just kind of, to prevent frustrations and to be clear what's happening, because there are constraints with this, of course, especially in the international fora, especially at the UN level. Hannah knows this probably from working on resolutions. It's not that we don't want to listen, it's just that it's not possible to get certain words or certain phrases in or out of those papers and those texts. So I think communicating and being open and being honest with what's happening, and then also managing expectations on both sides, also for our side, is key for successful collaboration. And then quickly to the things we do. I mean, this applies to all the projects and all the things we want to do. We want to, of course, include young people. We would want to not just have them there as tokens. We want to listen to their words and their ideas and their projects. And I think with many things, and I work specifically on the UN level, we have been doing that, but there's obviously always room for improvement. Just recently, we've had a couple of events in New York on the YPS agenda anniversary, and there we had our youth delegates, our current ones, so Hannah's successors, speak to different permanent representative of different states, amongst them Kenya, actually. So that's one way of doing that, to give the space, to create spaces for young people to be heard, to obviously also not interfere with what they're saying, to just give them room, because they have ideas, to give them room to voice those. And then on concrete projects, we're trying to have measures and metrics in place to actually see what effects our work has. But that's a bit of a complex process that is difficult to explain in the minute I have left. So I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. And that gives us room for even more exchanges in the future. But Christine, before we move on, I would like to give you a very short opportunity to react.
Sure. And I thank Martha. I believe we met when I was in Hamburg. So it's not enough to just have young people come and speak and share the experience. I believe what we are asking for, and Hannah spoke about this, is ensuring young people actually have a vote. If you're going to pass a resolution, what percentage of young people got to understand that resolution and voted towards the implementation of that resolution? Because what we are seeing is a lot of representation of youth in these rooms, but the representation is not really translating into policies. It is not translating into budgeting when it comes even to parliament, the different committees and security and whatnot. We are not seeing a budget being increased because there's youth participation. So we want a little bit more. We are thankful that the process has started, and what we are asking for now is ensuring that systems are actually put in place to ensure that youth participation.
Okay. So I think this element of including youth at every stage of the process and in a meaningful way comes through so far in all of our parts. And let's see. I will now try to make somehow a good bridge from the international and the national engagement of Germany for the YPS agenda. And I think bridge is already the term I'll go with, because in our next part we want to focus on how to bridge the civil society actors to advance the YPS agenda. And for this, I would like to warmly welcome Paul Klahre and Till Verweg-Strothmann. Till Verweg-Strothmann is Program Officer for International Youth Policy at the IA, the International Youth Service of the Federal Republic of Germany. And Paul Klahre is the Capacity Development Coordinator at the United Network of Young Peacebuilders, you know why, and a peace educator with World Scouting. So Paul, we have heard that also strong civil society is key for YPS implementation. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about how the situation is in Germany. How is German civil society using the YPS agenda? Where do you see barriers and potentials?
Yeah, thank you so much, Kirsten, for the invitation and the previous contributions. I think, firstly, it's important to recognize already in Germany, there's a strong youth work sector and there's a strong peace work sector. And how far they're using the YPS agenda is a bit a question of nuance. Because, of course, on the one hand, you need to acknowledge that a lot is happening in terms of working with young people to build a certain value system, to uphold our democratic and constitutional values, to strengthen our foundations for society. At the same time, whether the YPS agenda is used for this or not is highly questionable. And I would say at the moment it's rather not. The agenda itself is not necessarily what is actually important, right? What matters when it comes to YPS is the actual content matter of youth, peace, and security. So while we can rightly ask, is the YPS agenda used or not? Then that means, are we using it as a form of analyzing the world around us, analyzing in how far young people are included in peace processes, for example? Then it can be as an advocacy tool in how far it is used by activists, by youth organizations to advocate for more funding, for example. Then it's in terms of how do we share knowledge and experiences with those countries like Nigeria or Kenya that are much more advanced on YPS than Germany is. Or in how far is YPS part of our policy frameworks in Germany? Then the whole question is, well, but how is this actually benefiting a young person, maybe in a rural area, in a current situation in Germany where we have federal states where the far-right AfD political party is expected to have a voter, it's basically election percentage of over 40%. And what is the offer that young people have in these regions in terms of spaces to learn, spaces for fun, spaces for getting to know themselves, develop and build their identities, working and learning together with peers. So there is, when it comes to YPS, a huge, I think, misunderstanding that this is, as rightly put in one question, an external agenda that is externalized by Germany to say, what can we do externally? But we're not taking it as an invitation enough to sit down, bridge the youth and peace building worlds in Germany and ask ourselves, well, what can we together or need to actually do with the various challenges around us. We have heard the military service is one of them. The discussion has been highly dissatisfactory for most young people, that are not organized in youth organizations, who have criticized not being sufficiently involved, but also those that are not mobilized, that are maybe just part of the discussion on social media and that do not at all feel represented and then mobilize maybe existence, like we saw with resistance to that as we saw with the school strike. So there are many blind spots. I've tried to touch on this in my paper for the virtual platform, where I'm trying to look how Germany is losing a lot of opportunities or potentials at the moment. I will not try to go through all of them now, to be mindful of your time, Kirsten. But I think the key message kind of that should emerge is there is so much more that we can do, and the resistance is also there, of course, because of limited resources. And I think that's a reality. We've heard the term power before. The question of power and priority lies not so much with the, for example, youth organizations or the peace building organizations who are struggling for funding, who are struggling for existence. Sometimes we see that globally, but we also see that in Germany. And the question of how much does a ministry, or can the government put, for example, a funding opportunity or incentive specifically for YPS work, that would immediately drive in Germany hundreds of thousands of volunteers to work and discuss on it. I've myself served on the national board of a large youth organization in Germany, and the challenges of setting yet another topic, a priority, or streamline an idea such as this one of peace and security, which is becoming more and more essential to our lives, will take years, and it will require specific programmatic incentives. In Germany, many people might know the program Demokratie leben, live democracy. It would be an opportunity, and that is a chance where in Germany we have these established peace and youth sectors, to provide a specific funding or allocate a specific slot of the money that is mobilized there towards peace work. And if that is done, then volunteers, and there are so many, I swear, so to say, I can vouch for that. There are so many volunteers who would want to, and who would like to, and who have ideas of what to do. But there's not the space. So just one last specific example, I promise, then I stop talking. I've lived in Saxony for quite some time. The offer that young people in a rural area in Saxony have in terms of youth clubs, youth association, young political parties, civic spaces where they can simply live their lives, not in front of screens or by being recruited into the far right extremist parties. There are so few offers, and how now should the burden be on volunteers and young volunteer leaders to set up another youth group or youth camp and try to find time on top of all of the burdens they face themselves in terms of mental health, education, and so on? Or could we maybe just invest in creating specific programs that allow these youth groups to set up with an incentive of funding, with spaces they can use, with programmatic offers, with training opportunities? There are so many ideas, and I think the power for this, or to take the next step, lies unfortunately with the political actors. So it's an invitation to them, and I would say at this point in Germany, even a call in terms of urgency to offer and provide these spaces and help constructing the bridges between the youth and peace sector. I argue that this is highly necessary, but it will not be an automatism.
Thank you, Paul. And so before we will be able to have at least maybe some questions from the audience, of course, till you get the chance to react what has just been said, and maybe from your work at IAP, share an example how you are currently operationalizing the YPS agenda, and implicitly and explicitly maybe, and where do you see potentials and barriers?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for all the very important points that were already made. I just can agree on more or less everything Paul just said. So how to comment there? I think I would maybe take like one step back from the highly political stage and go one step, I don't know if down, but towards the field of youth work and international youth work, and maybe make the point or strengthen the point of opportunity, where I think we already had the point of making young people aware, empower people. And I think opportunity is the next key stone or pillar we need in this context, where we need to open up spaces for people to actually talk about peace, talk about their experiences back home. And I think the field of the international youth work opens up those spaces and offers the chance of like real encounters to build trust, to reduce stereotypes of foreigners and so forth, and really to see the power of international collaboration and advocacy. And I think one example I can bring regarding the, I would say, implicit YPS work from the field of international youth work in Germany was a very big youth encounter last year called Youth for Peace, where young peace builders from 25, 26 countries came together in Berlin for over a week and worked on the idea of creating a peace agenda, addressing the policy maker, even Bundeskanzler Merz, and making or stating their ideas of how to strengthening cross-border work and peace processes. And I think therein lays the strength in not just the field of work as the international youth work, but the method, like the encounter, the international or bilateral encounter. I think that's very important. So creates opportunities. I think that's a task. And maybe I would like to close with this challenge of making the implicit YPS work, as Paul already told or said, make it more explicit and not just work implicitly on peace, but work explicitly on YPS.
Thank you. That's great last words, but still, Paul, I wanted to give you the very short chance to react before we come to the questions from the audience.
Thanks, Kirsten. I'm glad that Till brought the example, and Iab maybe shows how the world are actually bridged. So while YPS is maybe seen as external, youth work in Germany or young people in general are not seen as peace stakeholders. In Germany, nobody would think that youth organizations promote peace, but what else are they doing? If not, so I'm trying to raise that question now as we have more conversations around what is security, how do we, with a stronger army, seemingly improve that security situation. Well, what are we doing to improve the peace situation in Germany? There's so much exclusion, discrimination, marginalization, disruption. Next week, I'm in Romania for a seminar on political polarization. It could happen in any country in Europe. And how do we navigate these as youth movements? I think we provide answers. And so there is this misperception. And at the same time, there are so many positive examples of functioning international youth work that shows peace work in action. So there we have very institutionalized, even in Germany, the German Franco-German Federal Youth Office. We have the German-Polish, we have the German-Israeli. So there are entry points that provide opportunities or where youth work actually demonstrates how it can be done. And even the youth work sector itself can learn from these international exchanges. And I've been also leading international camps, for example, for peace. Now, what can we learn from this and do in Germany ourselves? So there are many opportunities.
Thank you. That's always great to end on a positive note. And maybe your question is also answered now, but now I want to invite everyone back to the virtual stage because we have got some questions in the chat, and I will try now to pose a few, and whoever of you would like to answer them, please feel free. And because we have not only with a comment of everyone knows what is going on at the world at the moment, and I don't have to name all the crises that we are facing. But someone is asking, how do we make sure that YPS remains relevant in this kind of world? And in addition, I would like to pose that two more German-related questions. If we don't have even a national action plan on youth, peace, and security at the national level, how can we make sure that we credibly support YPS implementation elsewhere? And last question, maybe what are concrete steps that Germany can take to embed YPS principles across national policy frameworks? So I see many of you would be able to answer some of them, but who would like to start? Boris Mijatovic, please.
May I thank you and just making the icebreaker, and I guess some more better ideas will come up. But let me address, first of all, we start on the local level. This is for me very important. We start on the local level, working with kids. Look, in my hometown, I'm working with a young generation and play football, street football. And we try to make democratization as a process and social competences, media competences, and try to address people that they get confidence, that they can reach out in life, whatever they suggest to. Don't get me wrong, but all these youth parliaments and all these stuff sometimes go in a direction where diplomats send their children in. Don't get me wrong, I'm much for participation, but I want also the generation that, or that part of a city that is maybe lost or with social challenges be able to join in these kind of parliaments. Secondly, I would like to highlight that we have in Germany quite a huge number of associations called Vereine. All these clubs have young people that need to be addressed properly. And there's many old people running these clubs because they said, I don't find anybody who's taking over the responsibility. So my suggestion in very short term would be, let's go for the local stuff and then take it out to the world.
Thank you. So short answers. Someone? Paul?
Yeah, because I can try to what Boris said. I will try to just make the link of how can now YPS be used, because some young people are trying this, or some cities maybe are trying this, but we need more attention around these issues, because this is exactly where the key lies. So how can an association have that transformation of passing it on to next generations? Where are the financial opportunities to implement a project or to run a project for young people who do not know everything about reporting requirements or can apply for the funding in a way that that a ministry maybe requires to? So there are some entry points, and the YPS agenda, in my view, to say how to use it as a tool, invites us to think about, well, okay, we have an objective to achieve that is around participation, that is about cohesion, that is about human rights, that is about participation. And eventually living together in peace. And this is what matters locally, right, in the communities. And now let's sit down together with the different stakeholders that matter, and we can bring in the expertise of peace organizations who maybe otherwise work in other country contexts, but they have this peace building and conflict transformation expertise. Sit down together with the city council, with youth groups, with maybe school representatives, social workers, and think about, well, what can we together facilitate, and how far can we facilitate this process? And without the YPS agenda, I don't think we have this, or we have apparently not enough incentives to understand that this is how we tackle and how we, I mean, not least then save local democracy at this point in Germany.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Paul. And Hannah, you have less than half a minute to answer.
Perfect. Really quick point. I fully agree with what Paul said and also what Boris said. I think, for example, in Germany, we have some states that require cities and municipalities to participate youth. And that doesn't mean that there has to be a formal youth council. There are many pathways, as we've discussed, but the responsibility also lies with the state to bring those people to the table, to exactly participatory budgets, all of these avenues. But I feel as though we need the political push to make that happen Germany-wide and hopefully internationally as well.
And with that, I hope that we can maybe contributed something to inside that political push, and that push throughout all the stakeholder groups. Not only, it's, as we heard, not only from Christine, that it's a process that needs the push from all actors. And I very much hope that today is just the kickstart for some of them. And I know this has been a fast ride, and I know that all of you in the discussants, but also in the audience. Lastly, I want to make a round of applause virtually, and thanks to all of you. Thanks so much to the great panelists, and thanks to everyone in the background of BKHS. And of course, thanks so much to all of you in the audience who listened and who hopefully are now even more interested in the topic. And let's stay in touch and in conversation about youth, peace, and security. And have a great rest of the day. And